I'm moving in with my lover starting tomorrow. Old hag, get out of my house. I was dumbfounded, looking at the two of them. I knew about Brandon's infidelity. He was always someone who had a tendency to cheat. But I never thought he would say he wanted to divorce me. I look at the face of his affair partner. Young and attractive. Exactly Brandon's type of woman. I wonder, why did Brandon ever marry me? He likes young, beautiful women. He prefers someone with a polished look. What could be the reason he chose an older, plain woman like me as his wife? Money, perhaps. I was sighing. And for Brandon, I must be of no use anymore. If that's the case, it can't be helped. I thought, Brandon. I've been pushed around by your selfishness for so long. But now I'm freed from that role. If so, I might as well do as I please. My name is Sarah Turner. 35 years old. It might sound odd to say this myself. But the company I work for is one of the leading corporations in the country. And I hold a managerial position within the company. My husband Brandon works as a model. He has also been called for dramas and movies at times. We were seen as the ideal couple, envied by everyone. And have been featured in the local newspapers several times. But that's a thing of the past. We got married 4 years ago. During that time, Brandon's peak as a model had passed. His acting wasn't well received either, and no further offers came. What Brandon was left with were just his habits of flashy nightlife. And bad relationships with women. Sarah being a manager? You must be joking. When I shared the news of my promotion, what I faced was Brandon's mocking smile. Despite being younger, Brandon uses formal language with me. He says that if he doesn't stay conscious of it, his language gets rough even during work. For Brandon, who markets his gentle personality, it's important. However, the last time Brandon was called for a modeling job at the workplace was almost 2 months ago. It's true you might be competent at your job. But a woman being entrusted with such a major role. Sorry, but it's true. It can't be helped. The previous manager had to leave the company due to a stomach ailment.
Ah.
That explains it. Explaining this, Brandon finally seemed convinced. He still doesn't think I was chosen for my skills. What underlies his thoughts is his own inferiority as a model on the decline. Since his own career isn't going well, he can't genuinely accept my success. When Brandon first debuted, he was on the rise so fast that it seemed like he could shoot down flying birds. At the age of 20, he was chosen as the lead in a movie. With his neat looks and polite manners, his popularity among women was extremely high. In fact, I was also one of his fans. I used to collect the magazines he appeared in. And the DVDs of the movies he starred in are still my treasures. Then, by a strange twist of fate, we met and he confessed to me. I was overwhelmed with disbelief. Above all, I was happy. Because I had become lovers with the Brandon I admired. Perhaps that time was the most fulfilling period for us. I guess overtime will increase too, huh? It's okay. I manage my schedule in advance. So I'll make extra food the day before overtime. I've never neglected housework no matter how busy I was. That was my pride. And it will continue to be. I will live wearing 2 hats, a housewife and a manager. I didn't intend to do either halfway. Any requests for dinner tonight? Beef stew would be nice. It's getting cold these days. Saying so, Brandon shrugged his shoulders. The season is mid-November. The cold north wind will soon begin to blow. Brandon, who is sensitive to cold, was wearing thick, fluffy clothes over his tall frame. Even in a heated room, he was wearing gloves. I don't have any meat though. Then you should go buy some. And while you're at it, Please pick up some alcohol and potato chips as well. Saying that, Brandon lay down on the sofa. Apparently, he has no intention of accompanying me shopping. Reluctantly, I prepared alone and got into the car. After finishing shopping and returning home, Brandon was lying down in the same posture as before I left. When I approached, he lazily sat up. "You're late." Sorry, I'll make it now." I was about to start cooking when the doorbell rang. As my eyes widened, Brandon said with a smile, "You were so late that I ended up ordering pizza." Late. The roads were busy.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to eat pizza, so no need for the stew anymore. I looked down at the shopping bags I was holding. That's how Brandon is. Brandon, who has been pampered by those around him since his youth, lacks cooperation. Furthermore, what was Brandon doing while I was away? He didn't have any work scheduled today. That means he was free all day. He does go to a part-time job a few days a week, but even this doesn't last long. Being treated as a washed-up model, he gets indignant claiming he's still active, causing trouble with his colleagues. Nowadays, Brandon spends most of his day playing social games. Missed it again. All my allowance this month went to the game lots. Try to keep the spending in moderation, okay?
Yeah.
Sure. Although he nods, Brandon is not really remorseful. I give him a monthly allowance of $200, but often he needs more and asks for additional funds. Brandon's own income is unstable, and even if he does earn some, he spends it all on himself. Mostly on nights out with his model friends. And next on expensive personal clothes and accessories. Please don't be so mad. I'm not mad, but... Sensing something from my expression, Brandon came closer. He stood up from the sofa and tried to hug me. I actually prefer your cooking, you know? The food you work hard to make for me, it's definitely delicious. But, I got hungry.
Haha.
I slipped out of Brandon's arms. Anyway, let's eat pizza together. Have some drinks too. I still have work to do, so I can't join you for drinks. That's too bad. Brandon pursed his lips. Because of this closeness, I noticed. I twitched my nose. What's this smell? Eh? What do you mean? Your clothes smell like perfume. You must be imagining things. Let's eat quickly. Okay. Prompted by Brandon, I sat down on the chair and had dinner. During that time, I kept thinking about the source of the smell coming from Brandon's clothes. Asking Brandon directly wouldn't yield any answers. Could he be hiding something? I couldn't help but suspect. After dinner, I moved to the study and the unease didn't leave me. I sat frozen in front of the computer. This shouldn't be happening. It shouldn't affect my work. Above all, I hate leaving anything halfway done. Later, I carefully bought a listening device without Brandon noticing. It pained my conscience, but it had to be done. I needed Brandon to prove his innocence through his own actions. I thought so because, at this point, I suspected him of cheating. Brandon has always had a problem with fidelity. He has cheated in the past and each time, he has come crying for forgiveness. Reluctantly, I forgave him each time. And just when I thought he had gotten over this bad habit. Oh no. Missed again. Brandon had been hanging out at the casinos. I knew he spent money on mobile games. But I never expected him to be gambling elsewhere too. When I retrieved the listening device and checked the recordings, I was speechless. His infidelity was confirmed. After leaving the store, instead of coming home, he rode his bicycle somewhere. Brandon was humming a tune. He never hums when he's with me. The sound of steps going upstairs. The doorbell rings, and a door opens. A young woman's voice is heard. You're late, Brandon. Sorry. I couldn't bear to listen to the conversation that followed. The two of them exchanged words in a way that seemed too close. And soon the sound of rustling clothes followed. I was struggling to suppress the nausea that surged within me. Brandon. As I muttered, tears overflowed from my eyes. Thinking about it, Brandon always uses formal language with me. Isn't that a sign of him being considerate? To consider this fact, Brandon was speaking informally to the woman. She seems to be a junior at his office. They were talking about work, and she called him Brandon. As I cried alone in the study, there was a knock at the door. Sarah, is something wrong? No, it's nothing. I said hastily. Then, I slowly shook my head. It's nothing. How could that be? I'm sorry, Brandon. Sarah? Brandon's voice sounded puzzled. I opened the door and faced him. Brandon looked startled. Hey, why are you crying? I couldn't trust you. So I planted a listening device. I'm sorry. At my apology, Brandon blinked. A listening device? No way. I also found out you were cheating. But by using such a cowardly method, I'm the worst. Forgive me, Brandon. I was about to say that I forgive you too, but Brandon spoke first. How much did it cost? Huh? For a moment, I thought he was asking about the price of the listening device. But he wasn't. Brandon chuckled and said, What a coincidence. I actually hired a detective because you've been coming home late lately. I'm not cheating, you know. Right. Instead, you're secretly planning to buy a high-rise condo, aren't you? That's. I was at a loss for words. That was true. After much deliberation from my savings and income, I had decided to move to a place with better transportation options. The condo that Brandon mentioned caught my eye. Not only is it close to the station, it's new and full of life. The night view must be spectacular. It was slightly over budget, but I had decided to buy that condo. That's why I had been coming home late, due to the paperwork. Why didn't you tell me? That's because your birthday is coming up, right? I intended it as a surprise gift. A gift? For me? Brandon looked surprised. But of course. He is my husband. We would be living there together, so it would also be a gift for Brandon. Huh? If I made you anxious, I'm sorry. But I swear, I'm not cheating, and I want us to live in the new place together. Thank you, Sarah. Brandon grinned, and I felt relieved. He seemed happy. I managed to apologize for the listening device successfully. Just when I thought we could reconcile. Sarah, could you meet Emily? Who? Oh, come on. The mistress you figured out about. Brandon said cheerfully. I recoiled, unable to understand his nerves. Emily is a junior at my office, but her family is wealthy and she's young with potential. Honestly, she's a better match for me than you are. So? Wait, don't say that. Yes. Please divorce me, Sarah. A deep despair crawled up from my feet. I used to love Brandon's smile. But now, that smile is terrifying. Forgotten tears once again streamed down my cheeks. Crying again. Oh, excuse me. I'll call her over now. Why? How can you laugh so much? I felt utterly miserable, but I couldn't help but ask. It was my fault. But Brandon, that's too much. Not only did you cheat and then brazenly ask me to meet your mistress. Otherwise, you wouldn't give up on me, right? Please understand clearly. You and I are not a good match. I deserve someone young and talented like Emily. What do you mean by that? I wiped my tears and glared at Brandon. Then why did you marry me in the first place? Well, it was because of the financial stability. That's why I've always been considerate towards you, you know? That's terrible. I couldn't stand any longer. I slumped down on the spot. Brandon turned his back on me and started walking, heading for the entrance while making a call on his smartphone.
Ah.
Emily? Come over now. The old lady just won't agree to break up with me. Can you help convince her? Brandon. I yelled. Brandon stopped and turned around. His eyes were cold. Well, that's that. What do you mean? I'll gratefully accept the condo. It's a gift for me, right? But I won't be living there with you. Brandon's smile suddenly disappeared. Then, he turned again towards the entrance. I stood dumbfounded, watching his back. Soon, the sound of a car stopping in front of the house was heard. At the doorway, Brandon said something. The sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. The footsteps of two people, and their giggling voices. Sarah, sorry to keep you waiting. Nice to meet you. The woman smiled slightly. At first glance, she seemed polite, but her eyes carried a mocking glint. They looked down on me as I slumped down. Then, with unpleasant smiles spreading across their faces, they spoke in unison. I'm going to live with my mistress from tomorrow. Old hag, get out of my house. With those words, I understood. To Brandon, I was no longer of any use. Silently, I stood up from where I was. Well, better start preparing to move. Emily, you pack your things too. Yes. Living in a new high-rise condo is like a dream. They left me behind and were frolicking. I sighed. That helped me switch my emotions. Oh, Sarah. About the divorce papers. Huh? I'm single, you know? Huh? With a dumbfounded voice, they turned their gazes towards me. We've been divorced for a while now. Remember, we promised long ago. If you cheat 3 times, we divorce. That was supposed to be a joke. I was serious. Saying so, I pulled out the divorce papers from the desk drawer. Brandon's eyes bulged as he scrutinized the contents. It seemed he didn't even remember submitted them back then. We wrote each other's names when we made that promise, remember? I thought I had thrown that away. Brandon looked bewildered. I stared at him and said, I've been saving it all along. This is just a copy, the original has already been processed. When did this happen? Brandon was stunned, and I crossed my arms and continued. After the last time you cheated. This is the 4th time. Yes. We were no longer husband and wife. Yet, I continued to support Brandon. I couldn't leave him. So, I didn't tell him when I filed for divorce, and we continued living together. But now, I've reached my limit. I've been managing the living expenses separately. All your food and allowance came out of your account. Then, what about my savings? Brandon's face turned pale. He was aware of how extravagantly he had been living. Emily, frowning, slightly distanced herself from Brandon. As if to say, this wasn't what she signed up for. I'll be living in the condo alone. You two, who are strangers, have no rights to it. But it was supposed to be a gift for me. That was if you continued living with me. I dismissed Brandon's pleading tone. This is. Brandon, why did you call me out at this time, just for this? This isn't what we agreed on. Emily showed her selfish anger. Brandon looked displeased. Quiet. I didn't expect this to happen either. You bragged that your wife was so into you, and yet you were dumped long ago. You're in the same boat as being dumped. Huh? Emily looked puzzled. While I was disgusted, I said, your parents are executives at our company. So I've spoken to them. It's not right to make them so sad. What do you know about me? Emily blustered as best she could. But she must have some realization within her. She was sweating on her forehead. Your parents went to great lengths to make you a model. They regret that now. Huh? Why now, Dad? They thought there would be benefits for themselves if you succeeded as a model. So they supported you. But you've been partying all night and even got in trouble with the police. They're tired of covering up for you. The misdeeds of their arrogant daughter had exhausted her parents. I had curiously received that consultation. And at that time, the answer I gave them was to cut off ties with their daughter. What did you just say? Your father has decided to disown you and make your serious younger sister the heir. Then that's a different story. Brandon shouted, echoing what Emily had just exclaimed. These two were attracted to each other only by interests. They cared only for the economic benefits of the other, not at all for each other's well-being. I don't believe it. It must be the old woman's sour grapes. Really? But what have I lost? I'm moving into the condo. None of the money Brandon squandered came from my wallet, so no financial loss for me. You're a loser because your husband cheated on you. Brandon howled pathetically. Looking at his face, he seemed ready to cry. Brandon had approached me relying on my financial strength. But in reality, all the money regarding him had been drawn from his savings from when he was younger. As a result, his savings were now nearly depleted. Since Emily is also a spendthrift, the savings of the two were mere pennies. Moreover, neither had anyone else to rely on. I'm selling this house, so you two can go live wherever you like. What? Are you throwing us out? You tried to take the condo from me, didn't you? In that respect, nothing has changed from when you planned to kick out your former partner with nothing but themselves. Don't worry. I'll leave your furniture as it is. It was bought with your money, after all. Don't joke with me. Who's joking? I blew away Brandon's anger with a mere snort. You don't work and just laze around all day at home. To top it off, you gamble. Did you really think that was acceptable? My voice was cold. Brandon's voice, on the other hand, was tinged with panic. I'm not a jobless, I'm a model. Just in a recharging period. He sat up to there, hesitating. He must understand, deep down. It's about himself, after all. Right. So during times you don't earn, you should manage with your own money. I said, as if instructing. But Brandon seemed to find something to counter in those words. He retorted. That doesn't mean you can just take from my savings without permission. I haven't touched your money at all. I said with a laugh. By then, my tears had stopped. Only my sincerity remained unstoppable. All that I had been holding back was spilling out one after another. Besides, I don't need to rely on your money. My income isn't low. Brandon groaned. What is this? We're cornered. We lost, didn't we? Yes. It was now clear who was the winner and who was the loser. Brandon gathered his things and left the house sheepishly. For the time being, it seems he'll be depending on Emily's apartment. They should think about how to manage their lives from now on during this time. As declared, I sold the house and moved into the mentioned condo. It's empty, isn't it? There was, of course, a reason for moving. The original place was inconvenient in terms of transport, but more importantly, I was looking ahead to the future. If I had children with Brandon, they would need their own room. And surely, it's better if the school is nearby. This condo met all those conditions. But it all came to nothing. Brandon and I broke up and started living separately. There would be no children. During these 4 years, I never got pregnant. For one person, the space is too luxurious. I could have forgiven him. I muttered. I somehow knew that Brandon was with me for the money. Still, I thought he liked me a bit. That was wishful thinking, as revealed by his words. Since when have I been an old hag? I looked at my face in the mirror. Engrossed in work, my face was light on makeup. It was a face that had seen its fair share of hardships. With the hardships etched as fine lines and bags under the eyes. My long black hair was carelessly tied back, a sullen woman, that's me. When did I become like this? Before I was married, I used to care more about fashion. Wearing crisp suits, adorning myself with favorite cufflinks, choosing trendy lipstick. Since when, like this? I bit my pale, unlipsticked lips. I never neglected housework. In my work, I steadily achieved results. I am an elite. Yet, as a housewife, I failed. What went wrong? At that moment, my smartphone rang. It was a call from Brandon. Hello? Sarah, please reconsider. That was Brandon's first sentence. A voice begging, desperate, cornered. I can't make it with Emily. She can't cook, and she suddenly stopped getting work. Well, why don't you two get a job then? I said nonchalantly. I remembered Brandon's face. Brandon, who had never known hardship, looked younger than his actual age. Unfamiliar with wrinkles or gray hair, he always dressed in branded clothes. But now, that vitality was missing from Brandon. Please, Sarah. Let's start over. But I'm not suitable for you, am I? I retorted. It seems I cared more about those words than I thought. I was wrong. You are a respectable person. In terms of social status, that might be true. Not just that. You always prepared warm meals for me. And the clothes were always freshly washed. You were amazing as a housewife. Brandon praised me excessively. But that was only the convenient aspects of me he liked. He never praised my appearance or personality. I was disgusted with myself. I was crazy about such a man. Let me ask you in return. What is it? What about you is suitable for me? At my words, Brandon was speechless. I'm a manager at a globally renowned company. I've never slacked off to get to this position. What about you? Have you made any effort since you were sidelined from work? Brandon hesitated. No wonder. He really hadn't made any effort. Being sidelined was due to not practicing your acting. And just bossing the staff around until you were abandoned by everyone. What part of that person is suitable as my husband? I was desperate to make a comeback. Brandon exclaimed as if shouting. It had an empty ring to it. In reality, Brandon hadn't made any effort nor achieved any results. I suffered too. Anyone can suffer. What did you do about it? Other than ranking high in mobile games, what did you do? I did work. Brandon's voice was feeble. He must understand. Brandon had merely indulged in a life dependent on me. That was, in fact, a lifestyle funded by draining his own savings. Without realizing it, he continued to squander like water. It's the fault of those guys at the job. Brandon said as if he just thought of it. He was now retreating into a shell of self-pity and self-preservation. They unfairly call me a freeloader and a jobless. If it was so shameful, why didn't you work to clear your name? My voice was tinged with tears. You're a devil, saying that to hurt me further. Brandon spat out. I almost laughed. Old hag, and now a devil. How much more could he underestimate me? Since you have influence, you could have boosted me. Maybe even got me into the company commercials. I don't mix business with personal affairs. I cut off his resentful words. We were married, after all. I knew your abilities better than anyone. That's why I couldn't introduce you to anyone. If I did, I would only lose credibility. Not just me, but the company would become a laughing stock. It's not that bad. No, it was. I asserted that it was indeed that bad. Brandon didn't understand acting. He didn't conform to others or polish his acting. He skipped voice training to hang out and repeatedly arrived late selfishly. How could I recommend such a person? If you had faced your job and still failed, I wouldn't blame you. But that wasn't your case. You didn't put in the effort to improve. Even if I practiced, with my looks and talent. Brandon mumbled in response. Everyone else has looks and talent, there's no way I could compete. It was your lack of self-belief that disappointed me. I was startled by my own words. Yes. I disliked Brandon because he didn't believe in himself, didn't evaluate himself, and decided that his efforts were futile. Why do you deny your own possibilities? By running away like that, you're hopeless. You wouldn't understand being successful. Brandon unilaterally ended the call. His voice was tinged with self-pitying tears. I silently shook my head. I've never for a moment thought I had any talent. Everyone feels inferior at times, that they aren't blessed. That's why I worked hard. I compensated for being less by spending more time on work. That's what led to my current evaluation. But Brandon crushed even that possibility. I sighed, resigned. I heard rumors that our subsidiary was considering using Emily as a poster model. I didn't mind. At least in terms of work, Emily was more diligent than Brandon. I accepted that fact when the executives raised their voices. Emily is not suitable. If we use someone malicious like her, it will make our products unsellable. Astonishingly, that was Emily's father. Why are you taking away your daughter's job? I couldn't bear it and asked. Emily's father spoke with a voice heavy with deep anguish. Have you seen her posts on social media? No. It's terrible. Full of insults and complaints about others. She can work, but that makes her look down on others all the more. That's the biggest problem, Emily's father explained. Because she's my daughter, I can't forgive her. And towards you too. There was fault on my part, too, right? I gave a wry smile and said. According to Brandon, I'm an old hag and a devil, plain and unimpressive to look at. I suppose that's reason enough, at least for him. I'm sorry about my daughter. No, it's all right. More than an apology, I was actually asked by someone I know. They heard of your reputation and want you to marry their son. I'm not considering remarriage right now. I shook my head, indicating I wasn't thinking about it. Emily's father nodded in understanding. That's reasonable. But I want you to think about it calmly. After all, the person interested is the president's son. Emily's father said, crossing his arms. I was taken aback. A marriage proposal with the president's son was completely unexpected. I learned that the son was the same age as Brandon. However, he has been so dedicated to his work that he's never had a girlfriend. Emily's father continued to earnestly persuade me. He must really regret his daughter's actions. I felt somewhat guilty. It can't be helped. I'll at least meet with the president, that should fulfill my obligation to him. I was led by Emily's father to the president's office. At the door, Emily's father parted ways with me. The president is waiting inside. Thank you for showing me in. No, thank you for agreeing. Emily's father left, looking satisfied. I straightened my posture once more. I knocked on the door. A gentle voice responded. Come in. Yes. The president's office was spacious. A tall man with white hair, which gave him a distinguished appearance, was waiting for me at the center. The president shared a brief overview of his son's story. It seemed he was serious about the marriage proposal. As I hesitated on how to respond, the president said, "It might be rude to say, but I think you and my son are quite similar." That's not true at all. I was completely taken aback. The president leaned forward slightly, observing me. Then, a knock on the door was heard. Excuse me. You're late, Albert. The young man referred to as Albert put his hand on his chest politely. My apologies. I was discussing the next project with my colleagues. And it became more heated than expected. Didn't I tell you? That's the kind of man he is. The president seemed slightly exasperated with his son. Then, he clasped his hands together as if praying and said, Albert, Sarah. Would you meet alone just once? If you don't get along, you can laugh it off as my misjudgment. Dad. If that's the case, I guess it can't be helped. Would you mind accompanying me, Sarah? Yes, I would. Thus, Albert and I ended up having a sort of date. We went to see a movie and had dinner at a restaurant afterward. It turned out to be a very meaningful time. Albert and I shared similar interests and had productive conversations. We indeed seemed to be quite alike. However, to this day, Albert and I have not developed a romantic relationship. I gained a friend who is a good confidant and discussion partner. It seems he felt the same about me. Talking with you, Sarah, always sparks new ideas. That's great to hear. That day, we met again at a cafe after work and chatted. I thought it would be nice if we could continue this kind of relationship forever. Just then, I've found you. You are. It was you. You're the one who fed all those things to my dad, ruining my job. Emily's voice was low, almost a growl. She lacked the vibrancy I had seen in her before. Emily appeared cornered. That was evident. And Emily was blaming me for everything. I won't forgive you. It's all your fault that I. Emily's fault, how? Albert stood up from his chair, positioning himself between Emily and me, protectively. Emily's eyes widened. You, how? Do you know me? Unbelievable. Why would Albert be with someone like you? Emily's words had a trace of admiration for Albert. It seemed she had given up on Brandon and was now targeting Albert. However, Albert appeared to be unaware of Emily's intentions. Please leave. I have nothing to discuss with someone who insults my friend. How can it be? Rejected by the person she admired, Emily showed signs of being hurt. She glared at me with increasing resentment. Why is it always you who gets liked by guys with good prospects? I don't know. I thought Emily was misunderstanding something. Albert is a friend. In that sense, I do think he likes me, but it's slightly different. While you are jealous, she is trying to learn and utilize her experiences. She's someone I respect. Don't speak ill of her. Respect, for such an old woman. You'd better watch your mouth. That's no way to speak to a woman. His tone was like scolding a child. Emily teared up and backed away. Albert. I don't know you. And I don't want to. Please leave. With those words, Emily burst into tears. Sobbing loudly, she ran out of the cafe. Left behind, we were stunned for a moment. Coming to his senses, Albert apologized. Albert? Even though I got heated, I addressed you by your first name. It's impolite, especially since I'm not your boyfriend. Don't worry about it. No, I insist. It was unusual stubbornness for Albert. He glanced around hesitantly and then said reluctantly, Sarah, instead of just being friends, would you consider being my girlfriend? Now it was my turn to be bewildered. As I looked away, Albert continued. I knew you were cautious because of your previous marriage. And that's why I thought we should just be good friends. Albert. But I want to be honest about my feelings now. Saying so, Albert took my hand. I was startled. At that moment, I realized. Our friendship had just come to a crossroads. Now we either part ways or become closer. And we made our choice. I am much older than you. Being younger doesn't mean I'll be dependent. I'm a man too, and I'll support you as best as I can. With those words, I made up my mind. It was indeed like the saying, after rain comes fair weather. And so, we started dating. After dating Albert, for 6 months, we got engaged. How much is left on the condo mortgage? I'll pay for it. That's not right. After discussing it, we decided to split the mortgage payments for the condo. At the same time, we began living together, and Albert's belongings started to fill the room. This novel. I've read it too. Really? Despite its calm prose, it's got bold plots and character settings that are really compelling. What do you think? I feel exactly the same. We laughed together, holding our stomachs. Why do we get along so well? Albert. What is it? I wish I had met you sooner. I said, leaning close to him. It was a confession of weakness. I had never shown my vulnerability to anyone before. But with him, I could. Because now, I understood what it meant to rely on someone. Then maybe I wouldn't have had to go through all that sadness. I'm sorry. Albert looked down. I gave a wry smile. Why are you apologizing? If only I had found you sooner. Seriously. Once again, we were thinking the same thing. We both wished we had met each other sooner. But in retrospect, perhaps my life with Brandon was a necessary detour. Because my previous husband did nothing, I got better at household chores. Indeed, your cooking is delicious. Laughing, Albert hugged me. I will never let you go. Yes. I blushed but nodded. The smartphone rang. Surely Brandon was either trying to reconcile or asking for money. I knew it, yet I did not answer the call. Because as long as Albert and I are together, that's all we need.